Alright, Melodious Solfachord, Game 1, we are up against Runic Magnificestorm, which I thought was a pretty cool deck idea. Runic has never really been my cup of tea, but I understand that there's some good synergy there. They set a couple cards, managed to completely ignore our Fuelos. Oh well, we know at this point they're Runic, so we don't need to keep the Book of Eclipse, it's not going to do anything. Their first card is Smiting Storm, which pops our first play, which is the Gracia. Doesn't matter too much, we still got the search off, but it banishes two cards that very much matter. Losing Kulia as a 1-of kind of sucks if this turns into a grind game. She's also just our biggest body by default, so like we really would have liked to summon her if we're trying to kill this turn. Losing Solfachia also kind of sucks because that means we can't use it as extension and as a scale. Oh well, but that triggers their Crozia to summon from hand, which tries to search 2 for follow-up, and we say no with the Ash Blossom. Then they MST our scale as we're trying to set up for our first Pendulum Summon, which is a nuisance because that requires us to normal summon Refrain, grab Couplet, scale the Couplet, go into Concerto, and then rescale the Couplet, which locks us into summoning only Lights, which is kind of annoying. But we go into Beyond, we do a search, we conduct our light-only Pendulum Summon. Thankfully, we do have the other Solfachia in the extra deck, so we can pop 2, so we can get rid of our own Couplet as well as their Phoenix. Then we can get us a second Pendulum Summon, go into Kulia, just kind of setting up here. They presumably don't have any other interaction, or they would have used it at this point, so I'm just working towards an access code talker with 5300, because it's so easy to get lethal in this deck, and the fact that they don't set up that much of a board, they just had a couple of cards left, makes it so easy to pop everything and just get in for lethal. So, you know, like, going second, we do pretty well. Honestly, I mentioned it in the actual deck guide, but I feel like we just are a better going second deck. I feel like those are the games where I've been doing better this week while playing with this deck, so, you know, that might be the better build. Who knows? On to game 2. You know, I mentioned that this might be better going second, but this is a really good going first hand, and this one was up against Dracotail. That's right, we're swinging with meta, and we are going first this time. So we start with the Ostinato, because you kind of have to. Go into Baka, Baka summons from deck, Refrains adds Couplet so that we can summon back another one of our Refrains. All good fun times until they drop Femeno, which bounces our Baka and sets up a couple of things and recurs resources, you know. Dracotail always has Femeno. It's just one of the rules of the universe. If you set something in a column, it's going to have Imperm in that column, and if you are playing against Dracotail, they're going to have the Femena. Thankfully, we have a triple DD Crow that we can go into since they bounced our Baka, and we already had our Fusion spell. Get rid of a bunch of recurrent resources they might have been able to use, and then keep going. Cool, doesn't look like they have much else, so we're just gonna go ahead and play out our turn. Except they do also have the Azuna. Okay, well, dump Lupus, summon back the Lupus, go into Vanquish, or Jax, not Vanquish Soul, Jax, pop our scales, so then we have to go into IP so that we can conduct our Pendulum Summon. Still have the bodies, though. It still hasn't stopped us. We're going. We're doing the thing. At this point, I'm mostly focused on clearing out their board. I want those back rows gone so that they cannot, like, do things on their turn, because they only have 2 cards left in hand, which means it's going to be very difficult for them to fusion summon. So we go into the classic turn 1 access code talker to re-clear their board. They have the Rahu, we negate that, we kind of have to. So we have SP, a Pop, and a Dream, and that just ends up being enough because they just need multiple cards in hand to actually do anything, and this is very clearly lethal next turn. So the fact that they were greedy, bounced our Baka, which I think arguably was probably the correct play, they just ended up with not enough cards in hand to play through a half board that we were able to develop. So, you know, like, we can hang. We needed a really, really good hand for it, but we did it. Alright, last game, we are going second up against Tenpai Dragon Rulers. It's important to note that they chose to go first. Like, we lost the rock, paper, scissors. I almost always do. And yet they still chose to go first in a deck with at least a pretty significant Tenpai engine. I don't know how much because they pivot to Dragon Rulers pretty quick, but they're playing Genroku and Doradoras, so like there's Tenpai in there. But annoyingly, what Dragon Rulers is doing going first is just making Disaster, making him unaffected and giant. They also managed to set up the Hieratic Seals because all we had was the Ash. So they bounce our Baka as soon as we do it, and then they go ahead and they summon in a Morphage Goliath. They really don't want us to have any fun. They're like, okay, Floodgate plus OTKing you going second plus towers. That's the recipe for me having fun and the opponent not. Unfortunately for them, we can just go to battle phase and walk over it. Fortunately for them, that means that we can't take care of their Disaster this turn. They're going to get another turn, and we can't just walk over their tower, even though this deck has multiple ways of outing a tower. We've got access code that we can make 5300, which is big enough to actually beat over it, or we can just do Underworld Goddess of the Closed Heavens to take care of it. But they have no extra disruption or anything, so we managed to just go through a whole big long combo after battle phase and main phase 2, set up a whole bunch of disruptions as well as access code and say, fight through this. I dare you. So we Omni Negate, they go to battle, they swing, and they scoop because, well, we have 4 disruptions on board right now. Yeah. 4 disruptions on board right now, and something big enough to walk over Disaster with plenty left for lethal next turn. You know, it's no joke. Like, access code may be a little older at this point, but he is still a very, very good card. And so there you have it. We have pretty good disruptions, not the single best in the world, but they are good enough when coupled with just giant bodies and lots of removal. Cool? Cool. Bye-bye.